Welcome Christian Werling and Hans Niklas, PhD students at TU Berlin. They have made quite a commotion this year with their new findings and their research, Jailbreaking an Electric Vehicle in 2023, or what it means to hotwire Tesla's x86 based seat heater. Welcome to the both of you. I jokingly called you the prom kings of Black Hat, but you are making quite a splash. How is that for you? It's been exciting.
It has been exciting. Yeah. We've never answered so many press emails in the past couple of weeks. So, yeah, that was something new.
For PhD students, it's a pretty big splash. Okay, so let's get into it. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tesla, along with other car manufacturers, have started delivering cars with the ability to provide services, but they can be turned on and off depending upon a subscription to that company, correct?
That's correct.
You two looked at Tesla, which Tesla has a couple of pretty expensive service upgrades, including the $15,000 package that helps you self-driving. Also seat heaters, which you mentioned in your title for $2,000. What made you all want to see if you could break into this Tesla system?
So we've looked a lot at AMD-based systems, like with an AMD CPU in the past. So this was quite an opportunistic attack here, or research, because we've witnessed or we've read that Tesla switched to AMD-based processors in their infotainment. So that's what we
fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. That's what we know. That's our niche here, right? So we've published both software and hardware-based attacks on AMD in the past, and then we thought, okay, nice. This is a real-world system, like an end-to-end system that we could attack. And now let's see what we can do there.
So did you start by looking at these services? Was that sort of your first thing you were trying to break, or were you just did you stumble upon that vulnerability?
We kind of stumbled upon it. I think the very first thing we got in our hands was the actual hardware, like this box you would normally find behind the
So what did you guys buy a Tesla and take it apart? What did you do?
No, actually, our very first Tesla ride was the Uber ride from the airport here.
That is quite funny.
So we just got the hardware. We just got this board computer.
Yeah, and it's basically off of eBay. So if these cars get into crashes, then the infotainment unit, that's the computer that we hacked, actually, oftentimes ends up on eBay, where you can buy it for like $400.
Interesting.
Dollars. Yeah, exactly, and that's what a lot of car hackers use. So that's also where we got our hands on the Tesla.
Did you suspect that this was going to be an issue, or did you go in just figuring, we'll just see if we can break this thing?
We had the idea that this should work, but then the actual legwork to make it work was
different story.
Was a different story, exactly.
Okay.
Especially interesting here was, I think, that in the past, people always somehow got access in order to be root on the system, but with these new AMD systems, it took quite some while. Actually, we are the first, as far as we know. So that also meant that there was something to be gained from looking at the AMD side.
Okay, so talk to us about this vulnerability, and what I found most attention-grabbing is that there's not a software fix for this issue, correct? This is a rip and replace situation. So talk to us about the vulnerability and what it does.
So basically what we're doing is the very first piece of code that gets executed on the AMD CPU is actually part of the hardware. It's in something called read-only memory, which is part of the silicon and can't be changed. And we attack this piece of code with a physical attack where we just lower the voltage so that the CPU does a miscalculation, and that allows us to gain basically access at the very first code segment. And the problem here is that the only fixes would involve mitigations to these fault injection attacks, and for that you would either need to modify the hardware to build in like a glitch detector, or you would need to modify this piece of code to include like double checking that there's no injection going on. And that's why this is not fixable, because the hardware is already out there and can't be modified now.
So have you reported these findings to Tesla?
We have.
What was their response?
their response was they were primarily interested if our attack was persistent, so we only had to do it once, and then we would just keep our route right.
Is it?
It's not. It's not in the sense that whenever the infotainment system reboots, which it doesn't do very often, it actually keeps running even if you leave your car. But if it reboots, we have to do our voltage glitching attack that Niklas just explained. We have to do it again, which can take a couple of minutes, depending on how well you would engineer this whole process. So if you're really interested in making this super smooth, almost not noticeable, that's definitely possible and would just require some more engineering. But the general idea or the general proof of concept is what we did, and depending on the day and then on the weather on that day, it takes a couple of minutes for the system to boot up. But when Tesla heard this, they were relieved in some sense, I think, because they thought, okay, this attack is still quite expensive for somebody in terms of technical knowledge.
And a lot of expertise.
Exactly. So I think this is when they were relieved that it wasn't easier.
Sure. So we're not looking at a hacking your car as a service sort of threat group emerging anytime soon.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, that would require a lot of engineering and somebody really dedicated, and also customers that would be really willing to risk their warranties because you physically need to change something very deep in your car. But I don't think it's off the table. But
is the vulnerability translatable to other car manufacturers who are starting these sort of service programs?
The general type of vulnerability, definitely. So I think actually that Tesla is probably a pretty good example of car security out there. So I think in generally other systems will be vulnerable to similar attacks or even less sophisticated attacks.
So seat heaters, was it the seat heater that you first hacked into? Was that why it was top of mind, or was it just one of the interesting things that you could turn on and off?
So to be honest, I think we started at some point with thinking about how are we going to present this research? How are we going to make it interesting?
What's our hook? Yeah.
What's our hook? And then we stumbled upon these seat heaters, which are kind of a trivial thing, like they heat up your rear seats, right? And they're included in your car. So we thought this might be a good target. At the same time, this was one of the features that wasn't hardened by Tesla to
they weren't
be unhackable.
Locked it way down because it was a seat heater.
Exactly. So by now our attack doesn't work in the very same sense as it does in our demo again, because now Tesla put in another protection level. So we would need another exploit to actually, another exploit on the gateway chip, a separate chip, to be able to re-enable the seat heaters. But back then it was a catchy thing to sell. Yeah.
So what are some of the other sort of services you were able to tap into? The self-driving, you think you could hack into that pretty easily?
It's definitely a step towards the self-driving, but the self-driving was one of the features that originally included the additional protections that Christian just talked about.
Right.
So that's why we didn't look into that. And I think that got a little bit carried away actually in the news. But
well, we like it. We like a hook too.
Yeah, exactly. But so as far as unlocking different features go, you would need that additional exploit. But what we did also get into our secrets stored on the Tesla. So with our attack, you are able to gain access to the user data that's on the Tesla. So phone logs, locations visited, and similar things, as well as actually the secrets that Tesla puts on these cars to be able to identify the car over the air. With our leaked secrets, we're actually able to get access to the, let's call it car VPN, where the car connects back to Tesla and downloads firmware upgrades or configuration upgrades.
Well, it's very exciting research. And congratulations to both of you on making quite a splash at this year's Black Hat. Where can our audience go to learn more about your work?
I think the slides and the recording of Black Hat will probably be available publicly soon.
Okay.
And then for the very interested technical audience, there's our GitHub repository called PSP Reverse, where you can find all the code that we used and developed to make this work.
Niklas and Christian, congratulations again. Thank you for joining us at the Dark Reading News Desk. I look forward to seeing what you do in the years to come.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Of course.